What's up, YouTube? We got a pretty exciting set of videos coming out. This is a 5.3 liter that we're going to be putting in the green 96, my Jeep. And behind me here I have a table full of parts. So just a quick rundown of what this thing's getting, or what this is. This is a 5.3 out of like an 04 Tahoe. This engine's got 200,000+ miles on it. Just your typical, junkyard pulled LS. I got this basically how you see it. The heads were already off of it. A guy here in town was going to use this as a project, and he ended up going a different direction. So I got this, all the parts. I have a good set of 862 heads that have already been machined, new valves, new valve guides. We'll talk more about that later. So for what I'm going to be doing to this, all new bearings, main bearings, rod bearings, cam bearings, rings. I'm going to hone the bore. It's getting a Brian Tooley Racing Stage 2 truck cam, Brian Tooley Racing push rods, valve springs, of course new head bolts, new gaskets, and a bunch of other parts. Most of this stuff you can get at Summit or at your local Napa. Speaking of which, our local Napa store, Mountain City Auto Parts, has made a huge majority of this possible. When it comes to all the bearings and the seals that you'll be seeing us use today, that stuff all came from Mountain City Auto Parts. If you've ever done this before, I'm sure you know how challenging it can be when you're doing an LS swap to call up your local parts store and tell them, hey, I got a 5.3, and they don't know what you're talking about. You got to tell them, oh, it was a Tahoe, it was 2004, 5.3, four-wheel drive, But the guys at Napa, you can call those guys up, tell them what you got, and they were a huge help in getting all the parts that I needed for this thing. This is not a budget build. We're not going super over the top, but I'm going to do all the necessary steps that I think are important to make sure this thing lasts a very long time, and something that I can take out in the woods and beat on and not have to worry about it. That's the main goal for this. Not shooting for some crazy high horsepower numbers, but more or less just going for reliability and drivability even. So with that being said, the first step, if you're doing this at home, would be take off your valve covers, take off your rocker arms, pull out the push rods, take off your head bolts, remove the heads, and that's pretty much where this is. The crank pulley's off and the timing cover's off. And then I took this thing outside, I duct taped over the sealing surface for the heads, which you can see left a ton of tape residue. Taped over that, put the oil pan on it, put the top valley pan cover on it, took this thing outside and spent about an hour with a pressure washer and some simple green, got it cleaned up really well, and then painted it. So that's pretty much where we are now. The block hasn't been touched at all. We'll get into tearing this thing apart. All right, got the oil pump off, just these 4 bolts here. And now we're gonna take the cam gear off, the timing chain off, and then we'll be ready to flip it over and start pulling off the rod caps. Oh yeah, put the can. There you go, you can see it a little bit. Maybe better without that. Definitely got some wear on it, and if you're this far in, you might as well. I mean, the bearings aren't that expensive. Might as well go through it and do the bearings. Alright, let's get the engine flipped over. You have to mark them in some way. The orientation is important, and where they're located is also important. This is probably what most of you guys are going to be doing at home anyway. Cap number 1 gets 1 dent. Cap number 2, 2 dents.
I'm sure you can find them anywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure. Alright, so we got all the rods out. All of the caps are bolted back to their mate. And now it's time to pull the main caps off. There's bolts in the side, don't forget those. There's a bolt in each side, so take those out first.
Appreciate that. Now we got back.
Whew. A lot of buildup in there, but the bearings look really good and the crank looks really good, so that's a good sign so far. Everything looks nice and smooth, even, no signs of heat, discoloration, wear, or anything. So yeah, looks good. Okay, so my next step was going to be to hone the cylinder walls. The hone that I have is a 4-inch bore. This is a 3 3/4 inch bore. So that hone's not going to work. I'm going to have to get a 3 3/4 inch hone. This is the hone. These are the hones that I prefer to use. The flex hones, these work great. I've used these several times in the past. I just need a different size. So, since I can't do that today, I'm going to go ahead and knock out the cam bearings and put in the new cam bearings. And let me show you, I have a tool here from Summit. This is specifically for removing and installing cam bearings on an LS engine. And all of this stuff will be the same process, whether it's a 5.3, 4.8, a 6.0. So, put this in, line it up. I've already knocked out number 1. And there's the old bearing. These things weren't smoked, but they were definitely not in great shape. And then we'll just continue down. And the only thing you need to know when you go to reinstall them is there's 2 holes. Just look at how they are before you take them out. One hole is where it gets oil fed in, and then the other hole just goes on the opposite side of that. Here is something extremely important to note. The bearings are a different thickness. There's 2 that are the same that go on each end, 2 that are the same that'll be positions 2 and 4, and then the one in the center is completely different. And so the box, hopefully you can see that, the box is marked, and it gives you the part number. This part number is stamped onto the bearing, the exterior part of the bearing, and it shows you that 4511 goes in positions 1 and 5, 4512 go in positions 2 and 4, and 4513 is number 3, which is right in the center, and that number is marked here. I don't know if you're able to see that, but it's lightly stamped into the outside of the bearing. So that's very important to note. I've heard of people just sticking the bearings in there, and then you go to put the camshaft in it and it won't go all the way through. It doesn't fit right because the bearing will fit in the hole, but it's going to compress the bearing down enough that the cam then won't go into that. Just a light wipe of some type of whatever motor oil you might have sitting around. Alright, so I want to try to show you a little bit better exactly what I'm doing here. The tool has a collar that stops the bearing from going back any further. So I'm loading the tool up onto this. The problem with that is it makes it really hard to see where those holes go. But if you just look down at the holes and make sure that it's even here and the hole over here on this side, as long as they're even with the block when you knock them in, that sets your alignment for your oil hole over here. So then with this piloted in here, push that up there. And you can see the hole down there, and we're not quite centered. So there we go. Got that hole in the same spot on both sides. Alright, I got the engine flipped around. I put it up on its side so maybe you can see a little bit better what's going on here. You can see all the other bearings are installed except number 1. And it looks like there's going to be just enough room for the tool to clear and me to be able to knock it in, hopefully.